Live from Toronto, Canada, The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrin from Zoomer Radio, AM 740.
And welcome to the Audio Imaginarium. Come on in, weary traveler. Hang your cloak on a peg, grab a stool, and come warm yourself by the fire. There are stories to be told, and you are among friends. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the world's most famous alien abduction case. Although it wasn't the first case of alien abduction, the encounter of Betty and Barney Hill in September 1961 on a lonely New Hampshire road is widely regarded to be the first that captured the attention of a nation, and so thrusting the subject of alien abduction into the international spotlight. And although, like every claim of alien abduction, there are skeptics, many consider the account and the Hill themselves to be beyond genuine. Perhaps the fact that they were an interracial couple at a time when many parts of the United States were still very much resistant to integration and equal rights for Black and minority Americans would suggest they were not looking for unnecessary attention, especially the kind that would paint them in a negative light. In short, they would appear to have very little to gain from the fabrication of such claims. So we will be discussing the Betty and Barney Hill alien abduction case 60 years later. Kathleen Marden is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. She's standing by and will join me for the hour. Coming up in hour two, engineer, scientist, entrepreneur Chris Burris from C60 Evo will join me to discuss the miracle molecule C60, carbon-60, and the consumable form of carbon-60, which is ESS60, a powerful antioxidant, antiviral, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory. So, Kathleen Martin, as I stated earlier, the niece of the late Betty and Barney Hill. She's MUFON's Director of Experiencer Research and a Board of Directors member of the Edgar Mitchell Foundation of Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Encounters. Kathleen is one of the world's foremost authorities on UFO contact. She's the author of several books, a featured on-camera commentator, and an international lecturer. She earned a BA degree in social work and worked as an educator and education services coordinator while attending graduate school. The 60th anniversary edition of her book, co-authored by the late Stanton Friedman, captured the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience, will be released in just a couple of weeks, April 2021. Kathleen Marden, welcome back to the program. How are you?
Thank you. It's great to be back with you. I'm doing well.
Hard to imagine. 60 years has gone by. Your aunt and uncle, when did they start talking to you about it?
They talked to me, I should say my aunt talked to me for the first time directly on September 22nd, I believe it was, 1961. When I arrived home from school on September 20th, my aunt and uncle had had the close encounter with a craft on the 19th while they were driving home during the night. And I arrived home from school and my mother was on the telephone with Betty and seeming very concerned because Betty was concerned that a craft had come so close to their vehicle and to Barney the previous evening that perhaps they were contaminated. And so that was the beginning. Within 2 days, my family drove to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, to Betty's and Barney's home. Barney was not himself that day. He was sitting quietly. My father joined him. Barney was a gregarious person. He was always full of fun and very interested in everything that was going on with my two younger brothers and I. I was 13 at the time. And so we were told not to speak with Barney that day. But Betty spoke with us about their sighting and showed us the watches that were broken, took us out to the vehicle that had strange shiny spots on the trunk that hadn't been there the day before, that were magnetized. So very perplexing. And then I was there to witness the unfolding of this entire event.
Right, right. And so this happened just, I guess, south of Lancaster, New Hampshire. They're on their way back from a holiday in Niagara Falls.
Yes.
And that night, I guess Jupiter was visible in the night sky, and there was the moon was bright, and your aunt sees this light seems to be tracking them. And that at some point, and they estimated, I guess, about 40 feet long. At some point, it's hovering in front of them about 100 feet, but it's so large it fills their entire vision. And Barney gets out of the car. Now, I didn't realize this until recently. He was actually, I believe, packing a pistol, right? He got out, made sure his pistol was in his pocket when he got out.
Yes, what happened is the craft surged ahead and hovered directly over the highway, about 200 feet above Betty and Barney. And so Barney had to stop the car in the middle of the road, straddling the line. He grabbed his binoculars. He put the gun that was on the seat into his pocket. He'd taken the gun from the trunk earlier when they stopped, and he feared that bears might be in the area. It was a picnic area. So the gun remained on the front seat of the car. And he put it into his pocket. He stepped out of the car and looked up at the craft. He did not believe that it was possible that we could be visited by extraterrestrial beings. He thought that flying saucers were ludicrous, and he was attempting to prove that this is not what he was observing, as this craft just hung in the air 200 feet above him.
He had his binoculars with him too, right?
Yes, he held his binoculars to his eyes, and when he stepped back from the vehicle, the craft shifted to an adjacent field and now descended to within 100 feet of Barney. And he held the binoculars to his eyes. He looked up into that craft. There was a lighted row of windows, and behind the windows, he observed non-human entities. They were dressed in shiny black uniforms, and they all of a sudden, all but one turned in unison and went to a panel on a wall. Their arms went up. He could see them all the way down to about their knees. And when their arms went out, little fin-like structures started to slide out of the side of the craft, each side, and something began to drop out the bottom of the craft. At that time, he thought it was a rope. Since then, we know that that is the beam that the ETs travel on and take humans on into the craft. So anyway, Barney didn't know that at the time, but he became terrified. Right. He thought that there was a plan for him. He knew that these beings were somehow not human. That's a quote, somehow not human. And
Betty's still in the car.
Betty is in the car, yes.
And he starts running back towards the car. Is this when he also shouts, they're going to capture us?
Yes, it is. It is. He ran back to the car in hysterical condition, telling Betty that they had to get out of there or they were going to be captured. And as he was entering the car that he had left running, he noticed that the craft was traveling in his direction. So he said to Betty, "Roll down the window and look up. I think they're over us." And so she did. She was expecting to see lights. She didn't see any lights, even though it was a bright light night. The moon was about 3/4 full, and all she saw was blackness. So she rolled up the window again, and she said, "I don't see them, Barney." And then within seconds, she and Barney heard a series of code-like buzzing sounds that seemed to be striking the trunk of their 1957 Chevy Bel Air, and it caused the car to vibrate and for a tingling sensation to pass through their bodies. They remembered very little, but found themselves 35 miles down the road with full recall of what they had observed up to the point where Barney stood in the field. And then they had this period of missing time, as if only a moment had passed their 35 miles down the road, with spotty memories of a fiery orb that seemed to be sitting on the road, and of a roadblock. They didn't know where that occurred, but it was part of their vague memories.
So
And
when they
Betty,
got home, there was like 2 hours had elapsed by the time they got home, right? Just after dawn.
yes, they arrived home at 5:15 in the morning. They had an anticipated arrival of between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. So they were missing a significant chunk of time.
And you mentioned the watches. They had stopped working. Now, were they visibly damaged, or they just stopped working?
They were not visibly damaged. They just stopped working. They were wind-up watches, and I know that it was 5:15 because when they arrived home, they looked at their watches to see what time it was, and their watches had stopped working. So Betty reset her watch, and she set it to 5:15, which was the time that the clock in her house said.
Right.
And so that's the time that the watch she was wearing that night is set to.
Right, because they never worked again, did they?
They never did. No, she wound it up and it didn't work.
And do you have those watches today, or where are those
I-
watches?
I have Betty's watch.
Amazing. They never worked again. And her dress was torn, and there was a strange pink powder present on the dress.
Yes,
What else?
The pink powder grew later. Her dress was torn in several places. At the top of the zipper, in the thick zipper fabric, the hem was torn down on one side and the lining was torn from waist to hemline. They discovered that the binocular strap that Barney had around his neck was severed, and apparently he had pulled the binoculars from his eyes with such force that it severed the leather strap. Also, there were those shiny spots on the trunk of the vehicle in the location where they had heard the beeping sounds or buzzing sounds. And so Betty phoned my mother. There was a physicist who was a neighbor of ours, and the physicist suggested that if Betty had a compass, she should take it out to the trunk of the car to see how the needle would react. And so she did. She started on the side of the car and there was no reaction. But then when she placed it over those spots, the needle would spin and spin. If she took it to another part of the car, the needle would drop down.
Amazing, amazing. How long did those spots remain magnetized?
We're not certain about that. She ended up selling the vehicle to her daughter and her daughter's husband, and the spots were still there when they purchased the car. And then they eventually traded it in. So we have never been able to determine where that car is, what happened to it, or when the spots disappeared.
Wow, wouldn't it be wonderful to have that car today?
Yes.
Then there's some rather strange and confusing behavior ensued. They started taking a lot of showers.
Yes, well, that was immediately after they arrived home. They felt contaminated. The craft was so close to them, and they thought that they could wash off whatever contamination there was by taking long showers. So that's what they did.
Right. And your aunt always had her luggage. I'm not sure when this happened. She was ready and packed and ready to go at a moment's notice. Did that also happen almost right away, or when did that behavior develop?
She was, and I am not aware that she was packed and
Oh,
ready to go at a moment's notice.
I'm
The thing
sorry.
about
I had read an account where she had her luggage packed all the time. I don't know. Maybe that's not true.
I don't think that's true because I
Interesting.
think I
Okay.
would be aware of it. I was at
I'm
her house at least twice a week.
I have no doubt that you would be aware of that. So that's one of those incidents that may be that sounds as if it's apocryphal, but there were in some accounts a report that she was packing her luggage. Anyway, now so when did they reach out to the military base? Is it Peace Air Force Base?
Yes, it was Pease Air Force Base in Newington, New Hampshire. And when Betty phoned my mother, the chief of police from the neighboring town was at our home. He was my father's best friend, and he'd stop by for coffee every night at about 5 o'clock. And so he told my mother that the officer from Pease Air Force Base had notified the police departments if they had received UFO reports that they would advise the people to report it to Pease Air Force Base. And so Betty received that message and she called Pease that night. And then the Pease called back the following day and clarified information that they had received. So the report was written on September 21st.
Right. And the letter, I guess, did it make its way to Major Donald Kehoe first, or was it Major Paul Henderson that first received the report?
Major Paul Henderson received a report via the telephone from both Betty and Barney. Now, it was Donald Kehoe, the director of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, who received a letter from Betty and Barney that described their sighting. It described, or Betty actually drew the stair-step pattern that the craft was making, the unconventional flight behavior. She also talked in detail about the buzzing or beeping sounds on the trunk of the vehicle and expressed wonder if it might have been Morse code. And she spoke about the entities that Barney saw on the craft that were dressed in black, shiny uniforms, who frightened him greatly, so greatly that he seemed to have forgotten. He could not get through this block of what their faces looked like.
We're coming up on a break, Kathleen, but when we come back, we'll delve further into this. But I'm just curious about the timing of when they decided, or when they started considering undergoing hypnotic regression, so that they could remember some of these blocks. Was it your Aunt Betty more interested in the regression, or Barney?
It was both of them.
Okay.
Yeah, it was both.
All right. And the arranging of that hypnotic regression, when it did, because it didn't happen right away. It was a couple of years later, wasn't it?
It was a couple of years later. Immediately, my father had spoken with Barney about that possibility to kind of shake loose that memory of these entities, of the faces on the entities. But over time, Barney developed post-traumatic stress disorder. and bleeding ulcers. He was hospitalized. And so he actually took a leave of absence from work because his health had declined, and it was connected to this sighting. So he was eventually referred to Dr. Benjamin Simon, a famous neuropsychiatrist in Boston, Massachusetts, who had set up the psychiatric unit at the Mason General Hospital during World War II.
All right, we'll pick up on that. We'll also talk about 5 nights of very intense, strange dreams that your aunt Betty experienced as well. Kathleen Martin is with us, the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, the most famous alien abduction case in history, the 60th anniversary this year, and the 60th anniversary edition of her book, co-authored by the late Stanton authored, Captured, will be out next month. Back with more of The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Serra. Don't go away.
Question everything. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serra on Zoomer Radio.
Here's a resolution for 2021. Reduce stress and enhance your immune system. ESS 60 from C60 Evo. C60 is the carbon-60 molecule known to deliver more than 172 times the power of vitamin C. 172 times. ESS 60 is the purest form of C60, a known antiviral, antibacterial, and anti-inflammatory remedy that works. ESS 60 neutralizes free radicals from cell metabolization and external toxins to help minimize inflammation and maximize detoxification. Further, people report better sleep, more energy, and renewed mental clarity when they take our ESS 60 organic oil. To order your miracle molecule ESS 60, go to c60evo.com/Richard-Serrat. c60evo.com/Richard-Serrat. Buy now and save 10% by using the coupon code EVRS at checkout. Again, use the coupon code EVRS at checkout.
This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serra from Zoomer Radio.
Kathleen Martin is with us, the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, and the 60th anniversary edition of Captured will be released in just a couple of weeks in April 2021, of course, co-authored by the late, great Stanton Friedman. So these dreams that started, I guess, about maybe 10 days after the incident, that Betty had, can you describe those dreams?
Betty had a series of 5 dreams, and they occurred just before she woke up in the morning. And she was dreaming about conscious recall that she had of the trip. Yet sandwiched in between these dreams were dreams of an abduction. That she was captured and Barney was captured by non-human entities that looked very human. The ones in her dreams had kind of a grayish skin, but they looked very Southern European in appearance, about 5 to 5.5 feet tall, thick black hair, eyebrows, normal human features. Lips were a little blue, and wearing blue cadet uniforms. That is not what they remembered under hypnosis,
Right.
But that is what she dreamed.
And she never experienced them again after those 5 nights. So does it sound to you as if those dreams may have been somehow, I don't know, outside of her control, planted in order to maybe throw them off the trail in terms of, what these entities were?
Well, I think it's just typical dream material. When we dream, we might dream, particularly just before we wake up in the morning, about an event that is real, that we experienced. But always mixed in with dreams, you will have a little bit of fantasy material as well. So I don't think that the dreams were put there by the ETs. And the reason I don't think that is because as Betty was being escorted back to the car by the ET who had charge of her, he said to her, it would be best, we had decided, if you and Barney don't remember this. She had wanted to take evidence that had occurred. And Betty said to him, I will remember. If it's the last thing I do, I will remember this. And so I think that it was that was bleeding through into those dreams that occurred very early in the morning, just before waking.
So in advance of the regression sessions, which again are still a couple of years away, they continue to return to this location on, was it Route 3 in New Hampshire?
Well, they had been driving on Route 3. So yes, they would retrace their route along Route 3 past Cannon Mountain and Indian Head. And then they remembered being off Route 3. They remembered being on a dirt road. So they traveled on Route 175, which runs parallel to Route 3. I'm sure they took many other roads too, just
right.
Attempting to identify the location where they saw the craft and the roadblock. But they were not able to find that dirt road until after they had undergone hypnosis.
Mm. And the hypnosis is when they meet when they meet Benjamin Simon. Is that like December of '63?
Yes.
So when do the actual regressions take place?
The regressions began in February of 1964 and lasted for about 3 or 4 months. And they were taken separately. And while the other one waited in a soundproof room with loud music playing, and Dr. Simon reinstated the amnesia at the end of each session. He did this for 2 reasons. One, so that they would not contaminate one another's information. He wanted to check out their statements, just as I did in my comparative analysis in Captured. And also, both Betty and Barney had emotional outbursts. They were terrified over what was happening at certain times. And if they had remembered, Dr. Simon feared that it would cause greater anxiety.
So what did Barney recall first? Because he was the one that got out of the car and approached the craft. What did he recall through regression? Well,
first I want to say that Dr. Simon regressed them to the beginning of their trip and through the entire trip, what they saw, what they were doing. And finally, to the point where they found their car on a dirt road and there was a roadblock. And what Barney remembered is that the group divided into 2 groups of 3, and 3 went to Barney's side of the car. He put his hand on his gun, but he decided not to take his gun because he thought he would be injured if he did. He opened the door and they took him from the car. And what he remembered then, he had his eyes closed, but he knew he was being supported, but he could not feel hands on him supporting him. He felt almost as if he was floating, and only the toes of his shoes were bumping along the rocks. Then he remembered that they slid up what seemed like a ramp and bumped at the top, and then he was taken into the craft and to an examining room.
Ah, that's interesting. An interesting detail, the toes of his shoes, because when they got home, we mentioned Betty's torn dress, we mentioned the watches, but his shiny shoes. I guess Barney was pretty uh, particular about shiny shoes, and
He
the toes were scuffed, and he couldn't figure out why. And there we
Yes.
have it. Hmm.
And actually, he told Dr. Simon that he could not understand how his shoes were so deeply scraped, the toes of his shoes.
Right.
So he didn't use the word scuffed. He used the word scraped, meaning
Okay.
deeply.
Right. And
Yes.
at what point is he kind of shouting out or yelling out something about those eyes? They're in my brain.
That is when he was being controlled, where he was no longer the driver of the car, you might say. He might have been behind the wheel, but there were eyes in his head that were pushing into his head, controlling him.
Right. And he recalled a cup-like device placed over his genitals.
This is in the examining room. He had a complete exam, which included neurological tests. They were very interested in their skeletal structure, in their muscular structure. They closely examined their hands, their feet, their fingernails, their mouths. And at the end, just before the exam ended, they pulled his trousers down. They had now learned how to unzip a zipper, apparently, because they had broken Betty's. And they pulled his trousers down and placed a cup-like device over his genitals.
Now, there's an interesting detail because he talks about their method of communication, and keeping in mind that Barney is not, interested previously in aliens or UFOs, but when he talks about their method of communication, he uses the term thought transference, which is kind of interesting. Why is that an important detail?
It's important because they communicated through telepathy.
Right, but we know that now. We talk about that now, but he would not have known that, right?
No, he would not have known that. His and Betty's case was the first scientifically investigated UFO abduction in the United States, and they had absolutely no knowledge of anything that occurred outside the United States. They had no interest in UFOs prior to this.
Right. And so Betty under regression, what is her experience? And we're coming up on a break, so we'll start discussing Betty, and then we'll continue after the break. But what comes out during Betty's regression?
Well, she, going back to the car, was terrified. She'd never been so scared in her entire life. She put her hand on the door and she was going to attempt to escape into the woods, but she was intercepted. One of the entities pointed something at her and she lost consciousness. She was taken down a path, and then as she woke up, as she approached the craft, and they wanted to take her on, but she fought for her life, and she kicked one of them, and the hem of her dress was torn down and the lining was torn when she kicked this entity. They regained control of her, took her onto the craft, and placed her in a separate examining room, and did the same type of exam on Betty that they did on Barney.
They inserted a needle into her navel?
Yes, they, instead of using a cup-like device, they produced a needle. She said, what are you going to do with that? And they informed her that it was only a simple test. They made her understand that it was something like a pregnancy test. And this is before we had developed amniocentesis and it was being used in hospitals. So she said, don't do it. But the examiner plunged the needle into her navel, causing so much agony that Dr. Simon had to end the hypnosis session early.
Wow. All right. Kathleen, stay put. We'll take another time out, come back, and talk some more. Well, we'll have to get to the star map, of course. Betty's famous star map. That's upcoming. Kathleen Martin, the 60th anniversary edition of Captured. Back with more. Stay with us.
The truth will set you free, but first, it will really tick you off. You're listening to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett from Zoomer Radio. It's time now.
Hey there, I'm hard at work on another edition of Inner Sanctum, my free monthly newsletter. Inner Sanctum features my monthly brief, a column of my thoughts and opinions on what's happening in the world. It features a spotlight on a past guest, a look ahead to an upcoming episode of my weekly syndicated radio program, The Conspiracy Show. It features a look at this month in conspiracy and UFO history, and my Conspiracy Unlimited podcast episode pick of the month, and so much more. To get your free monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, delivered to your email inbox, just go to my website, strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on Inner Sanctum and register. It's fast, easy, and again, absolutely free.
The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett from Zoomer Radio. To talk to Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free 1-866-740-4740.
Kathleen, before we get to the star map, I just want to get a quick question in here from the live chat, the YouTube live chat, and we are streaming live on Strange Planet on YouTube tonight. Wayne Kozak asks, he's been trying for years to find out about the Hill's dog. What effect did this have on him? That's their dog Delcy.
Yes.
Was he abducted as well?
As far as Betty and Barney know, he wasn't abducted. He was squeezed in, shaking as far as he could go onto the front seat of the car when Barney was returned to the car. He was returned first before Betty.
All right.
And so the dog did apparently develop some anxiety as well, because it would have sort of nightmares or dreams after that, and her little legs would be running and she would be yelping. And she also developed a fungus infection on her back.
Interesting. All right, so back to the star map. Zeta Reticuli. First of all, that star map came to her in her dreams initially, didn't it?
She did dream about a star map, yes.
Right. But then under the regression with Benjamin Simon, then it became more clear. The details came out, right? Was she able to draw the star map in detail after the regression or during the regression?
Dr. Simon told her to draw the star map if she could draw it accurately from memory, and it didn't bother her too much. So over the next couple of weeks, she did draw the star map and then took it into his office to him.
And so some people have said that star map closely resembles the Zeta Reticuli system. So was that system known to astronomers at that time?
Yes, astronomers were aware of it, and there were other stars on the map that were not on the map that Betty drew. let me step back for a moment and state that Marjorie Fish was a brilliant woman from Ohio who saw that map published in the first book that was ever written about their case way back in 1966, before any of the real investigation was done.
Right. The Interrupted Journey.
Yes. And she thought that if this place existed in our galactic neighborhood, that she'd be able to find it. At first, she thought she would have many matches, but after 4 years, she still didn't have a match for the stars on Betty's map. But there was a new catalog that was published. She went to the university. She wrote down all of the distance data, and she knew all of the properties of the different stars. And she had at this point constructed 14 three-dimensional models and had done all the math to know where to put each star in its proper location. In one of her models, she had 256 stars in their proper location, out 54 light years from our sun.
My word.
Unbelievable work. She was so patient and brilliant at the same time. Finally, that new catalog did have the good distance data, and she was able to now add stars on the map that hadn't been there, and lo and behold, she had a match.
That's remarkable. And so the idea that these aliens came from the Zeta Reticuli system, I mean, what do we know now about that system? Are there planets there that could be inhabitable?
Well, we still do not have the technology to know a lot about Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 reticuli. We would only see, a blip from an extraordinarily large planet. They are in the volume of space where there are many exoplanets. So perhaps there are planets there. What is most interesting, I think, is not that Marjorie found this, but that these stars on Betty's map had special properties. All of the stars connected by solid lines and dotted lines are sun-like stars, although only 5% of the stars in that portion of our galactic neighborhood are sun-like. And all of the sun-like stars in that part of our galactic neighborhood are on Betty's map. And then the astronomers who analyzed this said that these are the routes that we would take if we were traveling in space. They were the most logical routes to go to and to stop at.
Wow. Just, it just lends so much credibility to this whole story. We'll take another time out, come back. Kathleen Marden, the 60th anniversary edition of Captured, co-authored by the late Stanton Friedman, out in April. And we'll be back with more of our conversation. Stay with us.
When in doubt, blame the government. You're listening to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett from Zoomer Radio. You already know.
I don't need to tell you how important building and sustaining a healthy immune system is these days. And just in time, my good friends at Get the Tea are offering a special package called the Immune Builder. You get 1 month's supply of Life Change Super Tea. That's 8 bags. 1 bottle of Bioastin. That's 75 capsules. Now, Bioastin, or astaxanthin, is known as one of nature's most powerful antioxidants and provides a wide range of impressive health benefits. The Immune Builder Builder also includes 1 bottle of potent C Wild Alaskan Sockeye Omegas. That's 90 gel caps. And 1 copy of the book Natural Astaxanthin, Hawaii's Super Nutrient by Dr. William Sears. There's so much more than tea at getthetea.com. Get your immune builder right now. Not available in any store. Use the code UNLIMITED and all your purchases ship for free. The Immune Builder from getthetea.com.
When in doubt, blame the government. You're listening to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett from Zoomer Radio.
All right, just a reminder, coming up at the top of the hour, Chris Burris, engineer, scientist from C60 Evo. We'll talk about carbon-60 and ESS-60, the purest form, the consumable form of carbon-60. Kathleen Marden is with us. And again, the 60th anniversary edition of Captured, co-authored by the late Stanton Friedman, will be out in just a couple of weeks. Before we get back to our conversation, I want to just jump in here with another question from our YouTube live chat. Show Me the Truth 74 asks, the aliens seem to follow and watch generations of individuals in some families. Kathleen, have you had any visitations from these intruders?
I have worked on 2 academic type studies with PhD scientists on experiencers, and what we discovered is that it is generational, intergenerational in 60% of the experiencers. Have I had contact? Well, I have to say that I believe that I have. I have memories of it. There was a craft that landed only 200 feet from my childhood home when I was 17 years old. And my mother and I had identical memories of being taken to that craft, terrified. We worked with Dr. James Harder at the time, who was a leading UFO investigator for the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. And we insisted that our experiences remain confidential. My mother has now passed away, and so I feel that I'm free to state that, yes, she also had a period of missing time when I was a teenager, where she would go grocery shopping every Friday night. On this particular night, she didn't come home at the appointed time. She always arrived home at the same time, or approximately the same time. On this particular night, my father, my 2 brothers, and I were very worried about her. And finally, she came in hours later than her anticipated arrival. She didn't realize that she was late. They took the groceries from the car, and the frozen food had thawed. The ice cream was soup. So I believe that my mother was taken in addition to Betty.
All right. That's, that's worthy of an entire show just on its own, and we'll hopefully have you back soon and talk some more about that. But getting back to Betty and Barney and Dr. Benjamin Simon, what were his conclusions after conducting these private and separate regressions with Betty and Barney?
He had always attempted to find a common explanation for what had occurred. He knew his conclusion was that Betty and Barney were not psychotic, that they were not suffering from a shared hallucination or psychosis. They did have an experience with the UFO. He was willing to go that far. He believed in their honesty, but he stated that he did not feel that he could believe that they were actually abducted until there was scientific evidence to confirm this.
So the gray alien connection and this case, the Betty and Barney Hill case, has sort of become the template, for future future cases. But the gray alien, it's been suggested that there was an episode of The Outer Limits featuring a gray alien that happened maybe several days before their abduction, and that may have influenced them. Did they see that episode? Did they ever talk about that episode?
No, they did not watch that show. I asked them, and Carl Flock, who was a former Assistant Secretary of Defense, investigated that case and looked through Betty's bookcases, interviewed Betty, and stated after his investigation that, one, she was not interested in science fiction. They did not watch those shows. Nights they were going out to meetings on civil rights, on human rights, the church meetings. They worked on the poverty program for the state of New Hampshire. They were doing many good things for the state. And so no, they did not see that. It was the invention in the mind of someone who was skeptical and not willing to accept the evidence.
Right. And previously to their case in 1961, because this is not the first alien abduction case. It's certainly the most famous, the one that brought it to the world's attention. But in previous abduction cases, let's say from the 1950s, were there incidents involving alleged greys?
No. The only previous case that we knew of the scientists knew of, was the Antonio Villas-Boas case in Brazil. But that was not known until 1966 or 67, although it happened in 1958. And those entities he did not describe as having gray skin. They were somewhat similar, but not really. So no, Betty and Barney, as far as I know, were the first ones to have contact with these gray beings. Now, since then, as an investigator and a researcher, I have found other cases where people had contact with the greys dating back to the early 50s.
Right. Barney died so young. I think he was only 46 from a cerebral hemorrhage. Was that at all, do you think, related to the post-traumatic stress of this incident?
I'm not certain about that. I do know that Barney, during World War II, was involved in a percussion accident or bomb where he was injured. In fact, his medical record shows that he was in fair condition in Newport News, Virginia, in the military hospital there during World War II. And I have a neighbor who is a medical doctor, and he was a doctor over in Iraq or Afghanistan. I think it was Afghanistan. And he was involved in a percussion explosion. And it caused a weakness in a vein in his head. And he ended up having a small stroke as a result. And I wonder if my Uncle Barney had the same problem, that there was a weakness and that finally it burst.
Betty lived to a pretty ripe old age of 85, and she died from cancer. Towards the end of her life, did she shed any new light on the incident?
I had the opportunity to interview her and spend a great deal of time with her, because I'd promised her that when she grew old, I would take care of her so that she would not have to go to a nursing home. And we had long conversations. The new light, I think, was when I was interviewing Betty, and in a very relaxed state. She wouldn't let me put her into hypnosis, but she was very relaxed. She became terrified. She couldn't go on with memories of what had happened on that craft. And, you know, a lot of people, though, think that this was a horrific experience. Betty, in her conscious recall, does not consider it to be horrific. She said the entities were kind, that they cared about Betty and Barney. They assured them that they would not be harmed, that they would be released after a few simple tests were accomplished. And Betty ended up saying that of all the experiences in her life, this was probably the one most outstanding experience. Not only that, but it gave her the opportunity to meet many, many more people that she never would have met if she hadn't had that experience. And I want to say that in this new book, there are extra chapters and new scientific information that we were not aware of when we wrote the first book.
Well, people will just have to wait a couple more weeks. The 60th anniversary edition of Captured, due out in April. Kathleen, thank you so much for this.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. And you can pre-order that book.
Oh, on Amazon.
Yes, and Barnes.
Terrific. All right. Pre-order it, folks. Kathleen Martin. When we come back, the miracle molecule. Stay with us.
Live from Toronto, Canada, Earth, The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett on Zoomer Radio.
Well, thanks for inviting me into your home. Long-haul truck, RV, camper, taxi, your parents' well-appointed basement with the simulated wood paneling, electric fireplace, and the painting of dogs playing poker, your loft, that greasy spoon just off the interstate, and your cabin in the woods. Welcome, welcome all. The miracle molecule, carbon-60 this hour. Chris Burrows is with us to discuss ESS-60, the consumable form of C60. This is the stuff that was fed to rats in the famous Paris animal study, and the rats lived just about twice their normal lifespan. Before we get Chris in here, if you want to get behind the work that I do here at Strange Planet Productions, and that includes this weekly syndicated radio program you're listening to right now, The Conspiracy Show, and also my podcast, Conspiracy Unlimited, you might consider becoming an official donor at patreon.com/strangeplanet. Patreon.com/strangeplanet. There are 3 tiers to choose from, but any monthly amount, greatly appreciated. And depending on the donor tier you choose, you can get your name read out on air once a month, or your name included in a screen crawl during the YouTube live stream. You'll also receive an episode of my radio feature once per month and an episode of my podcast, The Rock and Roll Twilight Zone. You'll get that delivered to you once a month. The Rock and Roll Twilight Zone is not currently available anywhere online at the moment, and I get a lot of people asking how they can get a hold of that and listen to it. We did about 45 episodes, not doing any more, no plans to do any more, but now you can get it through patreon.com/strangeplanet. And also, please take a moment and go to the website, strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca, where you'll find a list of all my affiliate stations. You can also subscribe to my free monthly newsletter there, The Inner Sanctum, strangeplanet.ca. All right, carbon-60 was discovered back in the mid-'80s, and the 3 men who discovered it won Nobel Chemistry Prizes because it was the first new form of carbon to be discovered in roughly 300 years. Now, ESS-60 is the formulation of carbon-60, which is used again in that original study that showed ESS-60 would double the lifespan of rats. ESS-60 is basically it's raw C60 that's been processed for safer human consumption. And Chris Burrows is an engineer who confirmed those findings on carbon-60. This Nobel Prize winning technology, originally meant for military defense, is now being sought out by global mega corporations and, well, people like you and me that can now safely consume it for optimum health. And great to have Chris Burrows here once again from C60 Evo. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Wonderful, Richard. How are you doing today?
I'm terrific, thank you. So, what's the latest research on ESS-60? What are you working on right now?
Well, so we're working on a couple of pretty amazing things. The first is related to sleep, and we actually started that study back in 2019. I'm working with a gentleman by the name of Benjamin. He's an associate professor out of the University of California, San Diego. And he's actually a consultant for a company called Oura Ring. If you're not familiar with Oura Ring, it sits on your index finger, and it's one of the best sleep trackers on the market right now. There's a number of them, but the Oura Ring is definitely one of the best. And because he's a consultant for Oura Ring, if we get participants into our study and they give him permission, he can look at the back end, see a lot more data than is available just on the app that comes with it.
Right. So So go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've got an Oura Ring, and you get good data on the app, but it's really more of kind of summary data. He can actually dig in and get even more data.
So, in other words, you're kind of sort of piggybacking on this sleep study using and the Oura Ring tracking the sleep. So then, what then is the connection between ESS-60 and the sleep study?
Well, so almost everything, if you look at my history as a supplement guy, which is really very weird for me to say, because I never intended to be a supplement guy. I actually think people get into the supplement business one of two ways. Either they decide they want to be wealthy and they decide they're going to do it with supplements. And I have no problem with people being wealthy. That's just not how I ended up in this business. The other is people have their own kind of physical challenges or maybe physical challenges of a loved one, and they solve those with supplementation, and now they want to save the world. Hopefully it doesn't surprise you. I don't have anything against people saving the world. I think that's a great thing. It's just not how I ended up here. I've been making this kind of carbon nanomaterial. You mentioned it in the intro. Was discovered in 1985 by three professors at Rice University. They won the Nobel Prize for it. And then when that eventually went into this famous Paris rat study where the rats lived 90% longer than the control group. So when that happened, and I'm just giving you some background because,
right.
Sorry, it's such a long-winded story. When that happened, we actually started getting phone calls of people saying, hey, how much in a dose? And we've been making this carbon nanomaterial for research scientists to put, as you mentioned, in defense applications and industrial applications like tires or batteries or solar cells.
Right, because the animal study was not a longevity study, it was a toxicity study, right? They wanted to make sure if we're going to start using carbon-60 for industrial purposes and people are going to be handling it, we need to find out if this stuff is toxic. But then the study evolved into a longevity study.
Yeah, not only do we need to find out if it was toxic, we have reasonable reasons to believe that it is toxic. Right. So, you look at a comparable molecule, the benzene ring, and how important that is for our society. We don't have modern society without the benzene ring. You look around your office, anything that's plastic, foundation is benzene ring. Most plastics, supplements, like most of these have a foundation of a benzene ring. But it turns out if you have benzene on its own, obviously in plastic, it's combined with everything. It's gone through chemical processes to turn it into a plastic or a medicine or a supplement or a detergent. But if you have it on its own, it's actually dangerous. It's harmful and a known carcinogen. And so when they discovered this buckyball, right, in 1985, it's got the soccer ball shape. So if you kind of want to picture a soccer ball, the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have the spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. Well, the shape, right, the pentagon shape there's a bunch of them all around the outside of the soccer ball, and that's the same shape as the benzene ring. And so they actually assumed that the molecule would be toxic. And you're exactly right. If we're going to be working with it on a regular basis, we need to know, really, in their minds, how toxic is it? Not if it's toxic, but how toxic is it? Mm-hmm. So in that study, they gave rats water, rats olive oil, and then rats olive oil with this ESS60 molecule. And it was that result, peer-reviewed published research, that showed a 90% increase in life.
Right. So this toxicity studies then sort of morphed into a longevity study.
Yes, the single longest longevity result in experimentation, peer-reviewed published research in history. So you look at us and kind of 2013, again, people started calling us and saying, how much in a dose? We're like, no, we knew it wasn't toxic by then, right? The theory was with that study was it might be toxic because it has some semblance to the benzene ring. But we knew that the research, and that was really kind of concrete. In fact, I'd love to give credit to the professors who actually extended their study. If you think about a toxicity study, there's one thing that you know to be a fact. If your group that you're giving the quote unquote toxic material outlives the entire control group, meaning all of the rats that were given water had passed, and all of the rats that were given olive oil with ESS60 were still alive, it's at that moment that there is no doubt that is a non-toxic substance, right?
Right. He could have ended the study right there, but he didn't.
Yeah, exactly. But they actually continued to do the animal husbandry for another 30 months, right? So the rats given olive oil with ESS60 lived approximately, like on average, 62 months. And so just kudos to them for taking that, toxicity study and really doing the due diligence to carry it out to its fruition. And now we've got this amazing result. So
right.
People start calling us how much in a dose. We're like, hey, we're really uncomfortable with this. We really didn't want to get into the supplement industry, but they kind of pushed us. And there's a ways, like almost everything that we're doing is driven by what our customers are interested in. And I say all of that to say that what our customers tell us, like our most consistent testimonial, is that our customers take the product in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then they report better sleep that night. And so it was that continually being reported by our customers that drove us to do a sleep study. I mean, obviously in these things, a lot of serendipity happens. I ended up in a conversation with Benjamin, found out that he was a consultant for Oura Ring. And, that's what drove, put the two pieces together, because we really do believe in doing human studies with our product to support everything really that it's not what we're saying, hey, we created it to do this. Our customers are telling us that it's doing these wonderful things for them. Now let's figure out what is the science that we need to do behind it to prove it.
Okay, so tell me then about the scope of this sleep study then that it's being conducted.
Yes. So a couple of things. First, I'll give kind of the bad news first. Well, it has like good, bad, right? So I'm working with Benjamin late 2019. 2020 was a very interesting year. It turns out that the Oura Ring is really good at identifying people who have COVID, even often before they know they have COVID.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. In fact, the NBA has authorized its players to wear the ring as some sort of pre-indicator. I know of one associate who said that for their wife, they actually got a notification from Oura Ring, not specifically COVID specific, but really saying, hey, we've noticed a difference in your temperature, an increase in your temperature. That's one of the data points that the ring provides. And you might be coming down with something, right? They have to be very vague. They can't say, you have COVID. And you can imagine that Benjamin, closely tied to Oura Ring, University of California, San Diego associate professor, he's been busy all of 2020, even until now. I've probably had three tops conversations with him for all this time. So that's kind of got sidetracked. So that's the deep behind the scenes data. But even before we get to that deep behind the scenes data, we actually are relying on the participants of the study. And here's what they are committing to. A baseline. So collect 10 days of data where we're giving them survey questions. And we've actually got a couple of results in. But the survey questions are, how was your sleep last night? How quickly did you fall asleep last night? How restless was your sleep last night? And how do you feel today, right? So that impact of that sleep. And from those, we can start to get patterns and then go look for those patterns, like the results of those patterns in the data. We're also collecting some very interesting things because the Oura Ring and most of the sleep trackers, we actually recently expanded the study to include other sleep trackers. It does provide data in terms of your sleep. How long were you awake? Of your sleep, how much REM sleep did you get? That's specific to the Oura Ring. How much light sleep did you get? How much deep sleep did you get? So that our participants in the study can take that kind of rough data from their screenshots, really from the actual application, and provide that to us, and then we can start making graphs and then start giving things over to Benjamin for like, hey, here's what we want you to look for in the data, because this is what the customers are saying. Go in there and let's get that, kind of really raw data to prove out what, again, our customers are saying.
Right. And so anecdotally, what are you hearing in terms of, let's say, REM sleep, which of course we know is so vital, when they use sleep deprivation as a torture, the idea is that they're by eliminating that REM sleep, which we know is restorative. That's what causes, people to sort of mentally break down and physically break down. So what are anecdotally people telling you, let's say, for example, about their REM sleep after taking this? I
want to add to your kind of the sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation is so dangerous that the Guinness Book of World Records removed sleep deprivation from their record books, because you can actually die from just sleep deprivation alone. A lot of people don't realize that. And there's another thing that triggered something for me when you were talking about, interrupting this REM and this NREM sleep. That's the alternative. There's a really good book out there called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, which really dives in. He's been, researching in a sleep science center for 25 plus years the detrimental impact of lack of sleep. And you look at the sleep aid industry, where effectively they're doing that same torture that you just described, except they're kind of getting away with it. They prescribe these medications. They're supposed to be sleep aids. You take them right before you go to sleep. They knock you unconscious, and they actually, in your body, what they do is they relieve a chemical called adenosine. So as adenosine builds up in our body, we have this desire for sleep. So it is able to relieve the chemical pressure caused by adenosine, so relieve that chemical, but it doesn't let you get your REM sleep or your NREM sleep. So you wake up without the desire for sleep, and that feels very refreshing, right, as opposed to desiring sleep desperately. But it doesn't allow you that healing, restorative sleep. And so I like to bring up that particular kind of quote-unquote sleep aid, because remember, our customers take it in the morning and then report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. I'm actually only aware of two other things that you can do in the morning, and they are totally like not sleep, quote unquote sleep aid, not drug related, not supplement related, that you can do in the morning and impact your sleep at night. One of them is exercise. Get exercise in the morning as opposed to not getting exercise in the morning. You will sleep better that night. And the other is actually getting exposure to the sun. When you get exposure to the sun earlier in the day, you actually start tuning your body with the circadian rhythm, with the rising and falling of the sun, and it enables you to sleep better. So we talk about kind of the big anecdote: our customers take it in the morning, report better sleep. So we get a lot of testimonials, and actually really people write in and share with us how vivid their dreams have become on the product. So that's a good sign of like deep REM sleep. We just recently started collecting this kind of REM sleep, and it turns out REM is probably a little bit bold of Oura Ring to claim, because there's really only one way to know about REM sleep, and that's if you're wearing electrodes and you're watching brain waves to know if people are in REM sleep. So if you look on the aggregate of deep sleep and REM sleep, some of the people going through this study have reported a significant increase in deep sleep, and that you would expect, from something that people are waking up and reporting that they had a better sleep in the morning.
Chris Burrows from C60 Evo, and we're talking about ESS 60, the consumable form of C60. So do we know for a fact that ESS 60, that it crosses the blood-brain barrier? And if so, what does that mean?
Well, we do know that it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it's really not surprising if you think about the number of atoms that are in an individual ESS60 molecule. It's pretty simple. It's exactly 60. There's 60 carbon atoms in this molecule. If you look at the typical cell in a body, and this is a number that will just blow you away, the number of atoms in the typical cell of a body is 100 trillion.
Wow.
Yes. That's a number that every now and then I have to go double check, just because it's so large and it's maybe not intuitive that an individual cell is made up of all these complex, proteins and the films around it, and like all of these things, and they make up 100 trillion atoms. And then you've got this ESS60 molecule that's 60 atoms. So it's really not surprising that it goes kind of wherever it wants, because it's so very, very small. We don't have any good research showing a particular impact, good or bad, and we would expect good given all the testimonials and the fact that these rats live 90% longer. We don't have any specific research that's saying exactly what it's doing positive in the brain as it's able to get there. I know, like, we can speak anecdotally, and I'm just going to interject here because I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my experience on the product. It's very important for me to share that the FDA has not evaluated our product. It's not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. Everybody's experience may be different. So, just understand that this is early cutting edge science. And that we're working on getting the human trials that would get people more confident in the things that I'm about to describe. So,
all right, well, I'm going to get you to describe those, Chris, in just a moment, because we've got to cut away here for a quick commercial. We'll come back and we'll talk about what's happening with you personally with ESS 60. Chris Burrows, C60 Evo, and ESS 60. Back with more on The Conspiracy Show. My name is Richard Serrett. Stay with us.
Curiosity, or did the devil make you do it? Whatever the reason, welcome back to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett from Zoomer Radio. To talk to Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
Here's a resolution for 2021. Reduce stress and enhance your immune system. ESS 60 from C60 Evo. C60 is the carbon-60 molecule known to deliver more than 172 times the power of vitamin C. 172 times. ESS 60 is the purest form of C60, a known antiviral, antibacterial, and anti-inflammatory remedy that works. ESS 60 neutralizes free radicals from cell metabolization and external toxins to help minimize inflammation and maximize detoxification. Further, people report better sleep, more energy, and renewed mental clarity when they take our ESS 60 organic oil. To order your miracle molecule ESS 60, go to c60evo.com/Richard-Serrett. c60evo.com/Richard-Serrett. Buy now and save 10% by using the coupon code EVRS at checkout. Again, use the coupon code EVRS at checkout.
Whatever the reason, welcome back to The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett from Zoomer Radio. To talk to Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
All right, Chris Burrows is with us, C60 Evo, and back in October of 1996, the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences bestowed the 1996 Nobel Prize in Chemistry to several chemistry scientists, and this was for their discovery of carbon-60. Chris, you were about to tell us what's happening with you anecdotally, because you take ESS-60 every day, as do I. So what are you noticing?
Well, before I do that, you kind of brought up like 1996 and the award of the Nobel Prize. I want to share like the weighted impact this molecule was having at that time, which kind of led to this Nobel Prize. In 1991, it's actually the same year that I started the first company manufacturing carbon nanomaterials. In that year, all 10 of the 10 most referenced scientific papers, out of all scientific papers, they just calculate which ones are the 10 most referenced. All 10 of them were related to carbon nanomaterials. And so you think about, today we think about something going viral with a YouTube video or some Facebook post or some, song or whatever. And we don't often think about something going viral inside of the scientific community in terms of a wonderful new discovery that just explodes onto the scene. And really nothing was more explosive than this carbon-60, these carbon nanomaterials back then in 1991. So
it's been described as perhaps the greatest chemistry discovery of the 20th century.
Yes. And I think you're on the right track for a Nobel Prize when they add a symbol to chemistry, to the language of chemistry. The @ symbol never existed prior to this molecule. We're familiar with the @ symbol in our email addresses, but when they discovered this molecule, it turns out, despite its small size, because we kind of talked about how amazingly small this molecule is, it is big enough for any atom on the periodic chart to fit inside of it. And so now there's a new symbol in chemistry. Lanthanum at C60 means lanthanum physically trapped inside of it, not covalently or ionically bonded to the exterior. And so, yeah, it's potentially the greatest discovery. Like and I'm excited to have been in this industry. Really, if you think about it, from 1991 until mid-2013, we never thought about this product. We thought very little about this product as potentially, something for human consumption. In fact, did think about it in terms of medical applications, but we didn't think about it in terms of consumption, right? And then it wasn't until 2017 when really things started exploding and our customers kind of demanded that we start selling a high-quality product. So I'm excited that this particular molecule and really kind of my industry has come this far, and I'm excited to see how much farther it's going to go. But all right, let me get to the thing that I've noticed when you ask and you talk about crossing the blood-brain barrier. And I'm not saying that this is specifically because it crosses the blood-brain barrier, but certainly the implications are there. I am absolutely the scientist that I probably sound like right now. I'm the kind of guy who had a spreadsheet for his migraines. And I have a spreadsheet going back to 2014 tracking every single one of my migraines. I used to get 4 or 5 migraines per year. And I was tracking them. I'm trying to figure out like what's causing them because they're painful. They really suck. And I want to get rid of them. And if I can figure out what's causing them, great. I'll just eliminate that from my life. And hopefully I can eliminate migraines. Again, 4 or 5 migraines per year. In 2018, when I started taking the C60 Evo formula on a regular basis, I didn't get a single migraine. And you couple this with my wife. I always remember the number 9 with my wife regarding migraines, because she used to get so many migraines that they would give her a prescription, and the prescription would only allow 9 of these pills. And so any migraine after 9, she just had to endure. And there were many months where she endured more than 9. In her case, when I finally got her to take the formula, and it took a while because it's my wife, right? Like that's kind of seems how things go. When I finally got her to take the product, her migraines were reduced to 1 a month or 1 every other month. And so, is that an indication of the ESS60 molecule crossing the blood-brain barrier and doing something? There's more research needs to be done.
Right.
If you
all we can say is may. It may. We have to use that word may.
Exactly. If you go back to kind of the most consistent testimonial, and again, take it in the morning, get better sleep at night. If you just get better sleep, that's going to have a positive impact on whatever migraines or whatever health challenges you're having. Because remember, there is no greater medicine at all than the sleep that you get at night.
Right. It's incredibly restorative. One thing that we seem to be finding, though, with buckyballs or C60 is that it's like a free radical sponge. So talk to me a little bit about that. What does that mean? It's mopping up all these, anything that it encounters, really. Why is that important?
Yeah. So it's an absolutely amazing molecule. It's got symmetry. So there's 6-fold symmetry. You can run 6 different planes through the ball around which it's symmetrical, which gives it an incredible resilience. In fact, you can take a buckyball and you can fire it at a plate of steel at 15,000 miles an hour. Most molecules would just shred apart. The buckyball actually compresses and bounces right back. And that's incredible resilience. It also has this ability, again, because of the carbons that are exposed on the exterior of the ball, to absorb electrons and release electrons. And because of that ability and its incredible resilience, it can actually absorb and release those electrons without any degradation to the material. So this is kind of the opposite of our cell phones, right? We get a brand new cell phone or a brand new battery in our cell phone, as is the case with me recently, and now it's lasting a day and a half, maybe even 2 days. And then not too long after, depending on how you use your cell phone, you got an ABC, always be charging, because you're just not going to you're going to run out of charge at some point. What causes that degradation of the ability to hold a charge is actual physical degradation of the material, the battery material. And so the buckyball at some point will probably be in a battery. It would be very cool. It would have a very cool name too. It would be the Bucky battery, which is just very nice. So the reason I mention all of that is because those electrons coming on are what help it be a free radical sponge. So inside of every one of your cells, in addition to this 100 trillion atoms, a lot of those atoms make up part of the mitochondria, right? There's a mitochondria in each and every cell, and it is the powerhouse of your cells. It is the engine of the cells. Without that, you don't have cells. Without cells, you don't have us. In that mitochondria, there's a process going on. That energy production process is called an ATP process. And that process, just like combustion with a car, you tend to whenever we're kind of migrating energy from one form to another, we tend to create these byproducts that aren't necessarily good, right? Well, the same thing with the mitochondria. It's creating ROSs, reactive oxygen species, which have a negative charge, and that's back to that negative charge, talking about how the buckyball can hold an electron and release electron. It can hold these reactive oxygen species and then subsequently release them. In fact, it's so unique that it is so small that it can get into the mitochondria, and we know we've seen tests where it's in the mitochondria, and so it's able to participate in this ATP process. If you were to fill a room with mitochondrial physician experts and ask if it would be good to have a free radical sponge in the mitochondria while it's going through the ATP processes, all of them would say yes. And so that is one of the theories of what's going on here.
And so these free radicals, which is produced by your cells, right? This is oxidization, right? This is what leads to aging.
Yeah.
So the removal of these free radicals, carbon-60, acting as a magnet or a sponge as it goes through your entire body, crossing your brain-blood barrier, soaking up all of these free radicals, that may be then connected to the longevity because it's reducing oxidization.
Yes. Yeah. Current medical thought is that aging is an oxidation and an inflammation process. So it's kind of not surprising that the formula that was associated with the longest longevity results in history on mammals, peer-reviewed published research, has the benefit of or has the characteristic of being an antioxidant. In fact, there's one study that shows it to be 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. And when it comes to anti-inflammatory, we know that it's at a minimum, it's good as an anti-inflammatory as it's related to physical exercise. We're not, because here in the States with the FDA, we're not allowed to comment on, does it have a positive impact on, just inflammation in general, because that's kind of seen as making some sort of claim about disease.
Right. Well, I can only speak, we got to head into a break here, Chris, but I can only speak anecdotally. And I'm north of 57 years old, and I am singular among all of my friends and acquaintances that are my age or even younger and older, that I can honestly say I do not have I don't have a sore back. I don't have stiffness. I bend over to tie my shoes. I don't go, none of that. And I take it regularly. That's all I can say anecdotally. So we'll pick up on this when we come back. Chris Burrows is with C60 Evo, and we're talking about ESS60, the consumable form of this miracle molecule, carbon-60. Back with more. Don't go away.
The truth is not out there. It's right here. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio.
Hey there, I'm hard at work on another edition of Inner Sanctum, my free monthly newsletter. Inner Sanctum features my monthly brief, a column of my thoughts and opinions on what's happening in the world. It features a spotlight on a past guest, a look ahead to an upcoming episode of my weekly syndicated radio program, The Conspiracy Show. It features a look at this month in conspiracy and UFO history, and my Conspiracy Unlimited podcast episode pick of the month, and so much more. To get your free monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, delivered to your email inbox, just go to my website, strangeplanet.ca, strangeplanet.ca. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on Inner Sanctum and register. It's fast, easy, and again, absolutely free.
This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Syrett from Zoomer Radio. To speak with Richard, call 416-360-0740 or toll free 1-866-740-4740.
A quick programming note coming up next week on the program. Wallace Wagner Jr., the author of Crossing the Crevice, and he wants to prepare, if you will, Christians for UFO disclosure. He said it's coming and it's going to be disruptive. He's a Bible-believing Christian, but also believes in the existence of extraterrestrials and the fact that they are, he believes, interacting with human civilization, have been since biblical times, and wants to prepare Christians for this eventuality. All right, so back to Chris Burrows from C60 Evo, and we don't have a lot of time here, but I want to also touch on, because we take it under the we take a tablespoon every day. It's suspended in olive oil, a product very familiar in this Greek household, I can assure you. So olive oil is that the best sort of way to suspend the C60 molecules in olive oil? Because you can also get it in avocado oil and coconut oil.
Absolutely. So I'll talk about all those and actually share my routine, because I kind of throw in all of those things in my routine. And just a slight technical, there is a difference between something being suspended in a liquid and something actually being dissolved. And let me talk about that, because it's actually really, really important. We can put a lot so really ESS60 is a black powder. We can put a lot of this black powder inside of oil and get it to suspend. The problem is that when you're putting it in and it's suspended, it's still in a crystalline form, which means that you're actually a lot closer to the 100 trillion atoms that might be associated with a cell. You're closely related to that. So you can imagine the difference in surface area between a suspension where it's still crystalline and a solution where it's actually dissolved. The solution is down to the monomolecular. So there's actually individual molecules of ESS60 really kind of interacting with the oils in such a way that they'll never settle out. If you centrifuge it or heat it up and cool it down, that ESS60 is not going to come out. So it's really important to know that difference, because I'm sure there's some products out there that are claiming higher concentrations. There's even, if you look in the C60 space, there's people who say that they don't even really understand the difference between the fact that something could be a suspension and it could actually be in solution. And that in solution is so bioavailable versus the crystalline form.
Okay. So it's important to say that it's not suspended, it's dissolved.
Yeah, because that does get it down
Okay.
literally to the individual molecule level is now available for your body to interact with it.
So folks, forget what I said about suspension. It's dissolved. Dissolved. My bad.
It's all right. So you look at olive oil, right? Because your question is you've got olive oil. In fact, we sell olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT oil. And I can tell you that we actually wouldn't have avocado or MCT on the market if our clients weren't actually interested in that product. So again, they drove us. When we get big orders of our MCT product, we actually reach out to the customers. They can order a case at a time, and we'll reach out to the customers and say, are you sure you really want MCT? It's the best product on the market, we believe. And you're going to get a good experience. But if you look at, we're such a science-based organization, the original research was on olive oil. And even if the next thing I'm about to say wasn't true, we would probably still be steering you towards olive oil. But what is also true is that you can get more of the ESS60 molecules into olive oil. You can get about 0.8 milligrams per milliliter. And then you can get about 0.6 milligrams per milliliter in avocado, and then about 0.3 milligrams per milliliter in MCT. And so there's two reasons that we recommend the olive oil over the other oils. Is first and foremost, the research was done on the olive oil, not the other oils. And then second, you can actually get a higher concentration. Now, let me just quickly share my typical routine. You talked about taking a tablespoon. I'm probably consuming about that much on a daily basis. When I wake up in the morning, there's a recipe for coffee called Bulletproof Coffee. It includes some ghee and it includes some MCT. Well, I use our MCT instead of the MCT from Bulletproof Coffee. And that includes our, ESS60 molecule. While that's mixing, I will actually take a teaspoon and a half of our olive oil product. So I'm right there. I'm probably getting I'm getting close to a tablespoon. And then when I usually have a salad for lunch, I usually put our avocado product on my salad. And so those are kind of the three products and how I consume on a daily basis.
Interesting. All right. This was a short segment, Chris, so we'll come back. I want to talk. You can also put it on your skin. You don't have to take it internally. You can also rub it on your skin. There's an advanced facial serum, and we'll talk about that as well. Chris Burrows from C60 Evo, and back with more of this conversation. Stay with us.
You want the truth? You can handle the truth. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett from Zoomer Radio. To get the truth, call Richard now at 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
I don't need to tell you how important building and sustaining a healthy immune system is these days. And just in time, my good friends at Get the Tea are offering a special package called the Immune Builder. You get 1 month supply of Life Change Super Tea. That's 8 bags. 1 bottle of Bioastin. That's 75 capsules. Now, Bioastin or astaxanthin is known as one of nature's most powerful antioxidants and provides a wide range of impressive health benefits. The Immune Builder also includes 1 bottle of potent C Wild Alaskan Sockeye Omegas. That's 90 gel caps. And 1 copy of the book Natural Astaxanthin, Hawaii's Super Nutrient by Dr. William Sears. There's so much more than tea at getthetea.com. Get your Immune Builder right now. Not available in any store. Use the code UNLIMITED and all your purchases ship for free. The Immune Builder from getthetea.com.
Exploring theories, uncovering facts, and offering a different view of the universe. This is The Conspiracy Show with Richard Sarrett on Zoomer Radio. To speak with Richard live, call 416-360-0740 or toll free at 1-866-740-4740.
So, Chris, carbon 60, they've tested it with in skincare applications, and so talk to me about you've got an advanced facial serum using ESS 60 as well.
Yeah, yes, we do, and I'll share kind of a little bit of the backstory. So one of my business partners, Patty, was actually on a regular basis. Well, there's 2 separate things. So first off, our customers who take the product internally, one of the things that they were reporting were kind of improvements in skin and improvements related to hair. And then you couple that with my business partner, Patty, was, anytime you have a bottle of anything, especially oil, tends to drip a little bit. So if you have a little bit around the surface, she would take it, make sure to clean it up with her finger and put it on her hand and on her face. And she was noticing a dramatic difference. So she approached me and was like, hey, we should come up with something to kind of capture both of these things. We've got the internal and people reporting great things about skin from there. And then we've got the surface, and it wasn't just Patty, there were other people, but obviously Patty drove this, putting it on their skin externally and reporting great benefits. And so, yeah, we put that all together. Patty actually identified kind of a unique botanist who's written a number of books on botany. Amazing lady. She actually kind of helped identify some of the core components that we wanted to include to make sure we were kind of as natural and organic as possible. And then I actually put her in contact with a formulator that we've been using for years. And they kind of put all of this brain power together and created this amazing product. It's an advanced facial serum. And the testimonials that we're getting from this are just absolutely phenomenal. I wasn't never intended to be in the supplement business. So the first 9 months of people giving me great testimonials about this, crazy molecule I've been manufacturing for so long, and then this crazy toxicity study, and now they're giving me testimonials. It just took me a very long time. I think 9 months is a long time to wrap my head around, what was happening. And I really wasn't expecting such great results. I knew they would be good, but I didn't think they would be as great as they are with this advanced facial serum.
So ESS 60 from C60 Evo, and I've hooked up to the website. If you go to strangeplanet.ca, you'll see a button there for it, c60evo.com/Richard-Sarrett will also get you there, c60evo.com/Richard-Sarrett. Now, so we've talked about it may improve brain function, it may improve sleep, it may act as a super antioxidant, antibacterial, antiviral, can be used for skin applications. I'm also reading things like it may also prove helpful as a support for male infertility treatments. Have you heard about that?
Yeah. Well, so I don't know the particular study that you're talking about, but it fits in line with a lot of things. I'm a little more familiar with kind of the female health side of things. Here's the reality, especially when you start talking about fertility. So fertility is it's not the last thing on your survival list, right? Like as a human, if you're struggling to get food or you're struggling because of whatever, something toxins are challenging your body that kind of comes off of, hey, we need to be in, fertility mode. We need to be in reproduction mode, and kind of goes into survival mode. So as your health deteriorates, and you may not notice this, but as your health deteriorates, your fertility will deteriorate.
Mm.
And then
Of course.
as that health starts to come back, then that fertility will return.
May help maintain strong bones, even stronger cartilage.
Yeah, and that one, I don't know that particular study. That probably can go into, and I have to be really careful, the fact that it fits into an anti-inflammatory diet.
Right. And you can feed it to your pets, right? Cats, dogs, horses, I suppose.
Yes, we have a cat version. We have a dog version. We actually have a very kind of amazing story of a horse that really the veterinarians were ready to throw in the towel. And I think they had, but their owner, they were reticent to tell their owner like how bad a shape the horse was. We collaborated with them on a project, got a lot of products to them. It's a horse, so it requires a lot. And my understanding is, and I've got emails to, like I only share testimonials when I've got a trace to the actual source, is that the veterinarians finally came clean to the owner and said, we didn't think this horse wasn't going to, it's not that we didn't think it was going to make it. It wasn't going to make it. And we're really surprised that it's still here.
And what else are people telling you about? How, and do the cats and dogs, how do you get them to take it? I mean, you can't stick a tablespoon of ESS 60, or do you put it on their food? How do you do it with pets?
You can do it a couple of ways. I know that, and I have videos and also my own pets. Like if I put their food down now and I haven't put an eyedropper, so our product, our pet, cat and dog product comes with a little eyedropper. So it's a smaller volume, of course. If I don't put the eyedropper on it, like I put the food down and it doesn't kind of, even if I've fed them late, they're kind of looking up at me going, okay, like it's not ready yet. You need to finish it. You can get them. Dogs and cats will readily consume. Well, cats, can be a little more finicky, of course, but will readily consume olive oil. And our dog and cat version is that olive oil, again, for the scientific reasons that was the original study, and it's the highest concentration of ESS 60.
And what are people reporting anecdotally with their cats and dogs after they take ESS 60? So
I'm going to share just part of kind of a longer testimonial that I share. Our one of our bigger distributors in Houston, she originally bought the product only for her pet, and she had no intentions of taking it. She noticed such a profound difference. And really with her dog, she had an older Shih Tzu. It was really from the energy level of the Shih Tzu. So, it's kind of hard to assess if the dog is sleeping better, but it's certainly fairly easy to assess that the dog has more energy. And ultimately, she decided to try the product because of the benefits she saw in her pet, and then went on to become one of our largest distributors. I always like to point out, when it comes to pets and improvements that they experience on something, we're always worried, and I'm always worried in the supplement industry about placebo effect, right? It's a very powerful thing, but it is the case that animals are not subject to the placebo effect. They don't realize that they're getting that little eyedropper, and that eyedropper is supposed to make them feel youthful and healthy and run around more, and therefore they do. That's not what happens with pets. So it's a pretty important kind of piece of information.
Right. Again, you can go to C60evo, c60evo.com/Richard-Serrett. And if you use the EVRS code at checkout, EVRS, you can save a little bit of money there. It's an expensive product, right? I mean, people may look at the price and say, wow, that's pretty, that's liquid gold. Why is it so expensive?
Well, so a couple of things. Let me just start with, when you get on your landing page specifically, they can get about a 20% discount by going on subscription. even if they're just going to try it once, like go on subscription, you can cancel at any time, take advantage of that discount in addition to using your code. This is, and I can tell you that I only take this supplement. So I really don't take any other supplement. So I don't know, if your audience is kind of, and I've got to be very careful about saying, hey, don't take other supplements. If your doctor is telling you to take supplements, or you understand your body well enough to know that it needs these supplements, these certain supplements, great. I also know that most of the supplements that I've ever taken, I've never felt anything. And I do feel something with this particular supplement. The reason that it's so expensive, it really is related to kind of the whole production process. The way that you make the ESS60 molecule is you actually vaporize 2 graphite rods in an inert chamber. So you have this chamber that you have to make sure has no oxygen in it. And then next you're vaporizing graphite. It turns out that graphite is one of the hardest materials on the planet to vaporize. And so you actually need local temperatures of the sun to vaporize those graphite rods in that inert chamber. It is literally local temperatures of the sun. If there's a sight glass that we can watch the reaction through, if you don't have welder's goggles, you will burn your eyes. If you take the goggle off and let the light shine on your skin, you will get a sunburn. And that's, it actually gets a little bit more complicated as it goes through to get the isolated C60 and then ultimately to get that ESS60.
So basically, you had to build a reactor, right? You had to build a reactor.
Yes, yeah, and we actually back in really kind of early part of 1991, the same year that all the publications were related to fullerenes, we were in the process of building what turns out to be the most efficient fullerene manufacturing piece of equipment that even exists till today.
There you go. So that's why it's a little pricier. It's an incredibly complicated process to create these ESS60 molecules. So Chris, great talking to you again. c60evo.com/Richard-Serrett, and people can save a little bit of money if they buy on subscription, 20%.
Yep.
They can save an additional 10% on checkout if they use the code EVRS. All right, Chris, be well. We'll talk again.
Thanks, Richard.
Chris Burris. All right, my thanks to Ryan White for producing the live stream, Carlos Cagina for technical production. Back next week. In the meantime, don't be afraid. There's nothing concealed that won't be revealed and nothing hidden that won't be made known. What you hear in the dark, speak in the light. What I say in a whisper, proclaim from the housetops. Move over, Aphrodite. I'm coming home. Good night.